How not to give up after 50 rejections and even become a friend of Tom Hanks. How to get out of poverty and overcome stereotypes. Michael Duncan could answer all these questions because his whole life was a thorny path to his dream acting career. A man who grew up in a disadvantaged area of Chicago and dug ditches for a gas company for years got to Hollywood at the age of almost 40 and a year later starred in the blockbuster Armageddon. And at 43, he was nominated for an Oscar for his role in the iconic The Green Mile. Unfortunately, he died unexpectedly in the prime of his life. The disgusting disputes surrounding the will and who would get his money stirred the pages of the tabloids for a long time. But in addition to screaming headlines, the actor left behind a bright and inspiring life story, which we'll tell you about today on the Biographer channel. Get comfortable and let's get started. Michael Clarke Duncan was born on December 10, 1957. His entire childhood was spent in the south side of Chicago. He grew up in one of the houses of the famous experimental project, the Robert Taylor Homes Public Housing Project. At the time, it was the largest public housing project for low-income residents in the city and indeed in the entire country, which was eventually completely demolished in 2007. The city of Chicago and the state of Illinois lacked the funds to maintain the buildings and began to fall apart little by little already after several years of existence. According to statistics, most of the residents of Robert Taylor were unemployed, and every year crime became more and more dominant. Little Michael Duncan grew up in such conditions. When the boy was 5 years old, his father left the family, and there were only 3 of them: Mother Jean, older sister Judy, and him. It was just me, my mother, and my sister, and we found a way to put things together. I guess that's where my tenacity came from, and that's how I made it in Hollywood. Keep trying your best, and that's what my mother instilled in me. His father worked on the railroad, often drank, and in his later interviews, Michael recalled that the way his father behaved with his mother when he came home wasted made him later never drink alcohol or even smoke. This had a great effect on the boy. When in 2010, at the height of his career, the actor agreed to star in the film Redemption Road, directed by Mario Van Peebles, he did so precisely because the film, unlike many others made on the subject, which rarely present the subject of alcoholism through comedy, or even as something glamorous, openly spoke about its harsh and bitter consequences. Mainly that a lot of people don't know that alcoholism is a very dangerous disease. Duncan was convinced. And it spreads like one. So when the father finally left, it was somewhat of a relief, but his action left the mother with the need to take care of the 2 children on her own. However, she pulled herself together, worked as a cleaner for 18 hours a day, and did everything to give her children a proper education and upbringing, especially to the younger Mikey, whom even then she dreamed of seeing an actor. Jean herself at one time wanted to become an actress and even took certain steps in this direction, but it did not work out, and later she invested all the hopes of her youth in her son. Duncan always remembered that his mother was caring, considerate, but with an iron hand, as she did not let him turn from the right path, and always supported him in his dreams, although not in all of them. The boy adored sports, had all the necessary skills for it, and dreamed of either the NFL to play football or the NBA. Jean strictly forbade her son to play football because she was afraid that he might get injured. That was when a lot of football players were getting hurt and getting paralyzed, and she didn't want me to end up like that, so she made the right call on that. As at least some kind of compensation, she allowed him to play basketball. How his mother forbade the chubby guy Clarke Duncan from playing baseball was for a long time the funniest joke on campus, and Duncan was still remembered almost 2 years later and jokingly called Mama's Boy. Because the whole conversation was over the phone, one of Michael's teammates overheard it and told everyone, and how the depressed and frightened giant could only insert phrases like, "No, I wouldn't do that," or "Yes, Mom, you told me not to play." And this was only because he was not used to lying to his mother and always told her everything as it was. Who knows how Michael Duncan's career would have turned out if not for that conversation. Maybe he would have become a star and an NFL champion instead of becoming a famous actor. But his mother decided that for him. The coach said to me, "If you play 2 years, you will be in the top 3 rounds of NFL draft, guaranteed." I said, "I'm playing, I just have to get my mother to say yes. I'm in Mississippi and she's in Chicago, she'll never find out." But I tell my mother everything, and in our conversation I said, "Mom, I made the football team." And all of a sudden I went to myself, did I just tell her? She really dreamed of making her son an actor one day, and so she always encouraged him to read more and even coached him, helping him learn to practice his voice, motivating him to read aloud to her. Perhaps that is why, after a teenage voice break, the boy's voice turned into a well-placed, deep, soft bass. But the boy's passion for reading and the world of cinema could not but cause a corresponding reaction from his peers who lived by completely different values. All the time they tried to provoke him and drag him into fights. And here the elder sister Judy, who had a hot temper and fought no worse than any other boy the same age, came to the defense of the younger brother. But one day, again, the mother gave her son a serious life lesson. Many years later, fellow actor David Morse, with whom Duncan shared this story, would retell it this way. Believe it or not, he got beat up at school by a bully who would be waiting for him after school. Mike would run from the school all the way home while being chased, afraid of being beat up. One day, his mother locked the door, wouldn't let him in the house, and said, "You turn around and you face that guy." She made him face the guy. And of course, the bully never went after him again. Mother and sister tried their best to keep Mike from the influence of the street life of their neighborhood because street gangs were everywhere, and their neighborhood was distinguished by this fact. He should be, and was always, grateful to his mother for the fact that his life did not turn out like most of his peers who lived in the neighborhood. Despite her tender and loving heart, Mama Jean also had a firm hand and clear beliefs about what her son should never do. At the memorial service dedicated to the untimely death of Michael Clarke Duncan, the famous actor Tom Hanks told a funny story about how Michael joined a street gang as a teenager. He heard this story from Mike himself when they became friends with him during joint filming in the most famous film in which Duncan starred, The Green Mile. Probably Michael would have been glad that people laughed and not cried at his wake, because he had always been someone who adored a laugh and a light humor. So, in the area of Chicago where the future actor grew up, there were many different street gangs, and many of his friends were members of one or another gang. It was kind of normal for the environment in which he grew up. Mike liked one of these gangs the most. Their sign of belonging to the gang was a little patch of red on their hair. So, young Duncan decided to join them. The initiation ritual was simple. You come to them, say that you want to become a gang member, and after that, they beat you mercilessly for 20 minutes. If you survive, you're in the gang. Michael passed the test, dyed a strand of his afro hair red, and was proud of himself. He came home where his mother was just roasting chops in the pan. The guy sat down at the dining table, choosing such an angle that Mom would definitely see this mark.
"What's that in your hair, Michael?" "Oh, that's my trademark, Mom. I'm in a gang." "Oh, really? You the gang now?" "That's right, I'm in a gang." Oh, shit. Oh. She came down with this frying pan across his head, and I'm guessing pork chop went flying all over the place.
It was from his mother that Michael inherited his big, sincere, and emotional heart. It was she who, no matter what was happening in life, always found time to look her son in the eye and convincingly say, "You're going to be a big star when you grow up." And he believed her, and he did everything in order to achieve something in life. Michael's basketball coach claims that even then he had an incredibly positive attitude towards everything in life. He worked as hard as probably few people in his position, but the smile never left the young man's face. Duncan was determined to succeed academically. He said, hitchhiking 17 miles to and from campus each day. At 6'5", he was fairly fit, weighed 205 pounds, and was one of the brightest players on the Cavaliers men's basketball team in Kankakee Community College in Illinois. From 1979 to 1981, he was a post player and starting center and played from the Alcorn State Braves for a year while he was studying to get his degree in communications at Alcorn State University in Lorman, Mississippi. However, he had to drop everything and return home to Chicago when his mother became seriously ill and all the financial worries of supporting the family fell on Michael's shoulders. From a practical point of view, the young man needed a stable job that paid well, but the fact that he had not received his GED certificate also significantly affected the choice of jobs available to him. So, before finally getting to Hollywood and becoming an actor, Michael Clarke Duncan tried a bunch of unusual and difficult jobs, the hardest and dirtiest of which was digging ditches for the People's Gas Company, a natural gas supply company serving Chicago. In one of his interviews, he described how physically demanding it was to dig up cubic meters of earth by hand so that mechanics could go underground to service the pumps. During the day, he dug holes, and at night, he also worked as a bouncer in nightclubs. Colleagues at the day job always teased Michael with the nickname Hollywood because he adored movies, always remembered his mother's words that he was destined to become a star, and willingly told about it to everyone who was willing to listen. His constant mantra was, "Man, I can do that. I can act."
Really hard work, and the guys used to call me Hollywood because they didn't think I was going to ever make it. And
you always said you wanted to be an actor?
Always. And the big joke was they would always call, and I'd be like 6 feet below the surface of the earth on this big main, getting all this dirt from around. They say, "Hey, Big Mike, Bruce Willis is online too. He wants you to do a movie. And everybody would crack up, and I'd just sit there and I'd say, you know what? I said, one day you guys are going to have to pay at least $8 to see this face.
But who could have known then that this joke about Bruce Willis inviting Michael to the filming would eventually become prophetic? Rumor has it that it all started with his work in Chicago nightclubs. It was there, thanks to his extraordinary appearance and manner of behavior, that a film producer noticed him and half seriously, half jokingly advised him to move to Los Angeles and try his hand at the film business. Maybe for Michael Duncan, this was the last push that forced him to finally start moving towards his and his mother's old dream. According to another version, one of the famous hip-hop artists touring in Chicago noticed funny giant Michael and invited him to go with him to Los Angeles as a bodyguard. So the future actor got a job as a security guard at a national touring company. Nevertheless, he moved to LA to become a star, but things did not immediately turn out as expected. The story is as old as the world. An aspiring actor came to Hollywood chasing his dream and survived there as best he could, sometimes starving, spending the night where he could, going from random earnings to earnings, just so as not to return home and admit to everyone that he failed. But in this story, Duncan had a certain advantage. He already had a job that, although it was not a dream job, paid certain bills. After arriving in Los Angeles, he began working as a bodyguard and worked for such showbiz stars as Queen Latifah, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence, and Jamie Foxx. Of course, it was a rather specific job that required constant contact with the stars and their star quirks. As a non-disclosure worker, Michael was never particularly forthcoming about those he had to protect, but sometimes he still remembered some of those cases with his unchanging sense of humor. I think the hardest one was Queen Latifah. I used to have to go to her trailer and get her out. At that time, Queen Latifah was not the size she is now. She preferred to get on my back and get a piggyback ride to the set, which was maybe like 75 yards away. So, I wasn't going to tell her no, but she was a lot of fun and we had a good time. Duncan worked as a bodyguard until March 1997, and by that time he had already managed to appear in several TV commercials, episodes of several TV series, and even full-length films. But in the beginning, until 1995, not everything was as easy and simple as it seemed when you read the actor's filmography. Month after month, Duncan went through dozens of auditions and didn't get a single role. He began to lose confidence in himself, and the fact that he was capable of acting at all. I really thought that I was a good actor, but I was probably one of the worst actors to probably hit LA. Michael said later, "When you're acting, you think you can act, but you really don't know how to act." After about 50 or more rejections, Michael called his mother and told her that he no longer had the strength to continue on this path and that things were not at all what he had imagined. Michael gave her two options for his future actions, which he had been thinking about for quite some time. Either he returned home or joined the LA police force, because after years of working as a bodyguard, he had enough skills for that. But Mama Jean just burst into tears. Many things were said. Michael also cried because it seemed to him that his mother betrayed him, refusing to support him in the most difficult moment in his life. But then again, who knows how Michael Duncan's life would have turned out if he hadn't listened to his mother then and chosen one of those two paths. Duncan himself later said that if it weren't for that conversation, he would definitely be someone else. Most likely, he would live in Chicago in a house full of children and while watching The Green Mile on TV with another actor in the lead role. He would think, that could have been him. What did Jean Duncan say to her son at that critical moment for him? She said, "You are going to stay out there and realize what you went out there to do. Just suck it up. Just stay out there. If you come back here, you are going to be very upset at yourself years from now when you look on that screen and say, I could have done that." So he picked himself up and continued going to auditions. A good friend of Michael Duncan, Michael Jai White, once recalled what life was like for Michael in Los Angeles before he got his first roles. In one of his interviews, Jai White told how at the very beginning he helped Duncan get into the world of cinema which he dreamed of. According to him, before they met, the future actor did not have a sweet life in Hollywood. There were times when Duncan had to spend the night in his own car, in his storage unit, or asked to spend the night on the sofa of one of his friends or acquaintances. Jai White, who at that time already had a fairly successful film career according to him, was exactly the person who convinced Clarke Duncan to take up the matter more actively. He insisted that with his looks, charisma, and deep characteristic voice, Duncan had every chance to get not just some small episodes or commercials, but also to star in a real Hollywood film. Jai White literally took Michael by the hand to a photographer who made acting portfolios for $40, and they took his first acting pictures. During the photo session, the photographer and White had the idea to give Duncan a baseball. This seemingly insignificant chip subconsciously gave an idea of the Michael Clarke Duncan's body measurements. But in order to start a real acting career, one more little thing was missing: an acting CV, which Michael did not have. And here, Michael J. White offered a great idea, although not entirely honest.
And then I gave Mike my resume. And I'm like, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to check out this resume. We changed one word from White to Duncan. That's all it was. And I said, because of your personality, people are going to like you because of that.
After that, he introduced him to the mother of the famous actress Holly Robinson Peete, Dolores Robinson, who was engaged in agency services for actors. Later, in many interviews, Michael Duncan referred to her as his second mother, who truly cared for him. Mike's first role was in a beer commercial where he played a drill sergeant. This was followed by various regional and national TV spots, and finally, in 1995, there were two breakthroughs in the future famous actor's life. One in the world of TV series, where he appeared in episodes of 4 series, the most famous of which were The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Married with Children. The second to such a dreamy world of big cinema, where he made the appearance in the comedy Friday. Of course, at the beginning, due to the stoutness of Michael's physique, he was offered very similar roles, which were based only on his appearance. So the guy from security got kicked out of work. In real life, he switched to the same roles in movies and TVs. But there was a moment when Michael clearly felt that, after all, he had become an actor. 1995, I appeared in a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air episode with B.B. King, and I had to say one line. It was, "Shut up." I got paid $1,500, and I knew then that's when I recognized I was an actor. Once I saw that check, I said, okay, I'm in this. I'm doing this for a career. Although he was already actively acting, at the beginning of his career, the actor lacked self-confidence that he could play some other characters apart from those that were usually offered to him because of his appearance. Furthermore, Duncan often heard criticism directed at him, such as that he would never be able to become a dramatic or any other actor because of his size and physique. They said, quote, "Mikey, you'll never be an actor. You don't have the look. You're ugly." In 1997, when Michael was already acting in episodes, he had only this job left in Los Angeles, the career of a novice actor. He decided to quit the job of a bodyguard forever due to rather tragic circumstances. It was on the night that the famous rapper Notorious B.I.G. was killed. Michael Clarke Duncan was supposed to work as his bodyguard. That night, Michael's friend, who was supposed to be guarding Babyface, called and asked to switch shifts. He liked to be the center of attention, as it usually was with the Notorious B.I.G., and Mike, on the contrary, could not stand it, so Duncan went to pick up Babyface and woke up the next morning to shocking news. Every year when that day, the anniversary of Biggie's death, comes around, I think about two things. A young brother lost his life for nothing. It was senseless and stupid, and that was the last day I worked security. I quit that day, turned in my stuff, and said I'm not willing to put my life on the line for somebody, because as a security guard or bodyguard, that's what you're supposed to do. But as they say, every cloud has a silver lining. It was at this time that Michael was noticed, and he began to appear in series projects more and more often. 1997 brought him episodic roles in series including The Jamie Foxx Show and The Wayans Bros, and 1998 episodes in the films Caught Up, The Players Club, and Bulworth. But that same 1998 was also the year of the actor's first breakthrough in a fairly prominent secondary role in a real Hollywood mega blockbuster. In 1998, when Michael Clarke Duncan was 41 years old, he was approved for the role of Otis Bear Curlenbear in Michael Bay's film Armageddon, starring Bruce Willis. It wasn't just a few-minute episodic role. According to the script, Michael was supposed to play the role of the first assistant and right-hand man of the oil man Harry Stamper, played by Bruce Willis. Together with a team of people most unsuitable for this mission, according to NASA experts, they tried to save the Earth from a huge asteroid. The audience immediately fell in love with the stout big man and remembered many moments with him. For example, the episode when Bear, on a motorcycle, ran away from a whole motorcade of police led by helicopters that tried to stop him, and when he sobbed during an interview with a psychiatrist, and when he demanded the right to spend the summer in Lincoln's bedroom in the White House, and of course, striptease and leopard pants in the scene of the team's medical examination. But it should not be assumed that Michael Duncan succeeded in everything at once, because he dreamed of shooting in a real big film all his life and was fully ready for it. Already accustomed to the same type of roles of outcasts, gangsters, and bodyguards, in Armageddon he had to play a completely different character. More dramatic, somewhat funny, with his own character and eccentricities. Michael Bay recalled that he was genuinely impressed by Duncan's personality and character, especially when, after the audition, he saw him burst into tears in the gym because he was so proud that he was invited at all, that his mom would be so proud of her son because of it. It was then that the director decided to cast Mike in the role, but his acting skills as a beginner initially left much to be desired. His first day on Armageddon, he sucked. I remember looking to Ben Affleck and thinking we might need to fire him, but I told him, "Mike, I hired you for you. I want the sweet Mr. Clarke Duncan I met in that room." I said, "The audience is going to fall in love with you." He looked and smiled with a deep voice and said, "Okay." From then on out, he became the most improved actor on the set. The way Michael literally learned on the fly from colleagues in the film, Bruce Willis, Billy Bob Thornton, Ben Affleck, and Steve Buscemi, made an impression on the director. Michael's eccentricity, sincerity, and abilities made him special. And although later, after Michael Clarke Duncan's Oscar nomination, many star and influential friends appeared in Hollywood, they always had a special relationship with Michael Bay. It was Bay who gave the actor that real first chance, which later led to the fateful The Green Mile and a number of other successful films and TV series after it. By the way, a few years after Armageddon, they will collaborate in Bay's another well-known film, The Island, in 2005, but that will be later. It so happened that in addition to director Michael Bay on the set of the super blockbuster Armageddon, Michael Clarke Duncan met another person who became not only his close friend, but also the one whose help would change his life and career forever and for good. It was the then famous actor, Bruce Willis. Yes, he would later become Michael's best friend and play a significant role in his career, but at the very beginning of their acquaintance, when they both spent time on the set during the filming of Armageddon, Duncan tried to avoid Willis and not even talk to him.
Doing Armageddon because people told me he was so quirky. And he walked up to me one day, he said, "Hi, I'm Bruce Willis." And I said, "I know." He said, "You never speak to me." I said, "That's because I heard that you don't like to people look at you and all that." He said, "Do I treat you that way?" I said, "No, you never have." He said, "Well, can we be friends?" He extended his hand. We shook hands, been best friends ever.
It cannot be said that immediately after Armageddon, Michael's career and life changed beyond recognition. In the same 1998, he again played the role of a bouncer in the not very successful, from the critics' point of view, comedy, A Night at the Roxbury. After that, in 1999, the role was followed by a secondary role in the more than mediocre comedy, The Underground Comedy Movie, which some critics even called the least amusing comedy ever made. And a role in the satirical black comedy Breakfast of Champions, in which, by the way, the main role was also played by Bruce Willis, was also not in favor with critics. It would seem such a bright start and something really successful, and here again, mediocre roles and mediocre pictures. But feeling that he was really capable of something, Michael no longer thought about leaving the acting career. Instead, he also occasionally worked as a photographer in advertising, starred in several episodes of TV series, and persistently waited for his time as a star. Which did not take long, with the introduction of a new friend whom he so diligently avoided at the beginning of the Armageddon project on the stupid recommendation of someone from the film crew. When Bruce Willis heard about the casting for the role of an unusual character in the film based on Stephen King's novel The Green Mile, he was absolutely sure that Michael Clarke Duncan would be perfect for this role. Willis used his connections to contact the film's director, Frank Darabont, and offered Duncan a role in the film. Knowing Michael well, Bruce did not doubt for a second that he was the right person for this role. According to Duncan, Willis called him and said, "Michael, I've just read the script, and you are this guy, John Coffey. I just know it." To prepare for the role, Michael Duncan read Stephen King's book twice, especially when Bruce Willis said he would personally recommend him for the role.
I read the novel. I've read it twice. A good friend of mine named Bruce Willis told me about the piece, and he told me, he said, "I'm going to call Frank Darabont for you." And after that, he said, "You're on your own. Please don't embarrass me." He said, "Because this is my recommendation." I'm like, "Man, I'm not going to embarrass you. Just make the call." He made the call. Frank called me a week later, and everything rolled from there.
Film's director and screenwriter Frank Darabont considered various actors for the role of John Coffey, an unjustly imprisoned giant with supernatural abilities. There was even basketball star Shaquille O'Neal among the preferences, but he still couldn't make a choice. So Willis, who heard about the project and was a big fan of King's book, insisted that Duncan be invited to audition as well. At that time, the casting lasted about 4 months, and the team still could not find the perfect actor because there were many specific requirements for the candidate for this role, including body shape and ethnicity. According to Frank Darabont, Duncan impressed him from the first seconds he appeared on the set.
It's hard enough finding a great actor, much less a great actor who happens to be of that size, of that ethnicity. You know, it's a very narrow window of a talent pool there, right? So we went for months through this casting process, looking at other people, working with other people. And a thing I could never let go of with Michael was his essence, the person who walked into the room, that sweetness that he had, that gentleness that he had, you know. He lingered with me.
And so when Michael entered the studio and began to communicate, he immediately drew attention to himself with his softness, the gentleness with which he treated people. And although everything did not go as expected for Duncan in terms of acting, the director was for sure it was worth giving this big man the necessary tools and one more chance. And then everything would work out. Yes, Michael really lacked the acting skills to perform such a difficult role, and having already approved him as John Coffey, Darabont hired acting coach Larry Moss to teach him how to get the necessary emotions out of himself and express them on the screen. And then it was a match. Larry Moss, recalling his work with the actor, told how he helped him find the great compassion that John Coffey had. When he connected with the love of his mother, the whole part opened up because John Coffey is a Christ figure. I told him that he had to carry all the pain of the world in his eyes. Once he began to talk about the sacrifices his mother made, his gratitude, love, and compassion for her was so profound. The second scene, they did a push into Michael's eyes, and there it was. As Michael later said about his acting, "I'm an emotional person, a very emotional person. All those tears you see in the movie were mine." It is said that it was after this film that Mike began to be called the Gentle Giant. Duncan had a natural talent for acting, but no one had previously taught him how to do it, did not show special techniques, did not help with how to immerse himself in the role more effectively. And when he received the help he needed for his development, his talent was fully revealed. After working with Moss as soon as they started shooting, Michael already had the necessary skills. As Darabont said, the actor didn't just play, he was this character. He was this person, and this, in his opinion, was the most amazing quantum leap from the first reading to actually playing on the set that you can imagine. Larry Moss can certainly be credited with discovering what Michael had, but the truth is that Michael had real talent and just needed a little direction. Duncan did not argue for a second with the demands or advice that the director put before him. He was clearly aware even then that it would be something really big, something that happens once in a lifetime, and which you should never give up, no matter how difficult it may seem to you. Too much has already been passed to gain life wisdom and soberly assess his chances.
I knew that this was a lifetime thing for me. This was going to change me as an actor. And I knew if I went in there with any doubt, like, oh man, I don't feel like doing this today. Hey, this is what you wanted. You asked for this. You prayed for this. You hoped to get this role. And now you got it. And now you're going to say you don't know if you can do it? No. And if that did try to creep in my head, I smacked it right back out.
At 6'5", Duncan was certainly a tall man, but on set alongside co-stars David Morse, 6'4", and James Cromwell, 6'6", he didn't seem quite as stocky as should have been according to the director's plan. To make John Coffey look even more massive on the screen, the film crew used various filming tricks. Certain shooting angles, lighting, forced perspective, and other special effects to create the illusion of not only physical, but also spiritual greatness of this character. Especially in order to prepare for the film, Michael Duncan had to give up his habits in training and nutrition in order to achieve the parameters and the physical form that Darabont wanted to see in John Coffey. Duncan was 6'5" and weighed 320 pounds, while John Coffey was 7 foot and about 350. So the director hired a nutritionist for the actor who, according to Michael, bought so much food that he even gave it away because he couldn't eat so much. The actor did get to 345 pounds, but for this he had to stop training. Darabont wanted him to look more natural and not like a duck, and for the role he had to stop the powerlifting he loved so much for up to 3 months. Filming was not easy for the actor. Of the 16 hours of daily filming, Michael spent 10 in a prison cell. This role was not an easy experience for Duncan. Not only in terms of its complexity, he was also influenced by the atmosphere in which the filming took place, the hopelessness of the prison and the entire situation. The actor experienced it together with his character as if it was for real. Moreover, fortunately, again probably thanks to his mother, he never had to be behind bars in his life.
Me personally, no, but as John Coffey, scared every day. It was the weirdest feeling I've ever experienced in my entire life.
Because you've never been in that place
before. No. But as an actor, once you become that character, that's you. And all his fears were not my fears. The dark, these people that I did not know what's going to happen to me. All those became reality as I became John Coffey. So it was very weird.
But the time you spent in the cell was not the greatest test for the actor. The most difficult scene was shooting the episode with the 2 dead girls, when he had to not only cry, but literally howl with pity. And at the same time, he had the feeling that the entire film crew rushed to him at the same time, because according to the script, people formed a whole squad to catch Coffey. Later, the actor admitted that he literally felt a panic attack every time another take of this episode had to be shot. Darabont was a very demanding director and reshot some scenes with a dozen takes. Everything had to be done not just well, but exactly as he imagined, ideally. There were days where even Duncan, who was used to digging ditches for 8 hours a day at his previous job, was physically exhausted. Tired isn't even a good word. Exhausted, spent, depleted. Those are words you should use. You have to bring up this emotion and you have to keep it up. It's like me asking you to cry this whole session where everybody else talks and he takes pictures. You're not supposed to concentrate on that. What you're supposed to concentrate on is crying. And then I'll tell you to stop after 25 minutes. Tom Hanks, with whom they became friends during this time, helped Michael more than anyone else on the set. The famous actor, who was involved in the main role of the bodyguard of a suicidal prisoner just before that, had already managed to receive 2 Oscars, but he used his free time to help Michael Duncan with his role, for which the emotional giant was incredibly grateful. Similarly, during filming, Hanks was always there. Without him, I would not have been able to bring that emotion up, because when the camera's on me, he's on the other side of the camera and he's crying like a baby. Also, Michael recalled, when you look up and you see this great 2-time Academy Award winner and you're on the other end, man, you bring it up automatically, and both of you guys are going at it. You're trying to keep each other going. According to Michael, without Hanks, it would be much more difficult for him to bring up to the surface all those difficult emotions necessary for the role, because when filming the episodes in which John Coffey had to cry, Tom Hanks was always standing on the other side of the camera with tears rolling down his eyes. How could one not play it exactly like that when a great actor, winner of 2 Oscars, stood opposite and supported you along the way? It was the Green Mile that brought the actor real recognition and became his big break in the world of cinema. When the film came out, almost no one doubted that Michael Clarke Duncan would win an Oscar. For the actor who was happy just from working on the film, the nomination for the Academy Award became the biggest and most incredible event of his life. After so many years of hopes and disappointments, at the age of 42, Michael Duncan was finally able to receive well-deserved recognition.
Everything that's happened from Armageddon to the Green Mile, all this stuff is just amazing to me. And I'm not going to be one of these people like, oh man, I'm tired of this, that, and other. Man, I love every second of it.
The film had a very wide resonance and was nominated for many awards in addition to the main award of the Film Academy. Michael Duncan, as Best Supporting Actor, received the Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actor and the Black Reel Award. There were also many other prestigious nominations from the Chicago Film Critics Association Award, Golden Globe Award, NAACP Image Award, and many others. And none of this, as the actor's colleagues in the film and the film director later unanimously claimed, could not have happened if the director had not at one time made a very risky bet on an almost unknown and not very professionally trained actor. Later, Frank Darabont told with true respect that what he remembered most about the actor was his incredible devotion to his chosen craft. Both the director and the entire film crew witnessed how he grew professionally before their eyes, and this could not help but inspire those who worked with him. The director also consistently repeated that perhaps no actor has ever deserved an Oscar nomination more than Michael for the role of John Coffey. Yes, Michael Duncan never really studied acting. From time to time, he worked with acting coaches, as for participation in Armageddon or before filming in The Green Mile, when the directors insisted on it. But of course, he had no real acting education. But this never prevented him from considering himself a real actor, especially after he had already achieved something in this field. And to be nominated for the Best Actor Oscar is quite an achievement. Therefore, the giant himself often joked when they sometimes tried to provoke him on this topic. Once an actor told me he went to the Shakespeare School of Acting, and I said, I went to the Shakespeare of Acting too. And he said, oh really? And I said, I went to Shakespeare Elementary School in Chicago. He didn't laugh and didn't think it was funny. It's all the same to me. I love acting, it's a part of me, and I try to put a little bit of myself in each of my roles. Immediately behind the hype and unexpected fame after the Oscar nomination, Duncan got to bask in the rays of fame and take a break from the oppressive drama of The Green Mile. Together with his old friend Bruce Willis and actor Matthew Perry, they took on the new killer comedy The Whole Nine Yards, which was released in 2000 and, despite a mixed reaction from critics, became a hit at the box office. The artistic comic duo of Willis Perry, supported by the impenetrable charisma of Michael Duncan, and the role of a friend killer, Frankie Figgs, and the irresistible charm of actresses Natasha Henstridge and Amanda Peet, although it did not receive prestigious film awards, was very much loved by the audience. After that, in 2001, he appeared in the comedy See Spot Run. This time, it was a smash hit by critics, although it wasn't exactly a failure at the box office. It would seem that after such a triumph in the role of John Coffey, he slid back to mediocre roles, because in this film about an FBI agent dog, Duncan played a fairly episodic role of an FBI agent, the dog's owner and trainer. But that's how it is, an unpredictable acting fate. By the way, it's funny that both Duncan's mom and his good friend Bruce Willis gave him almost the same advice when Michael got his first really big paycheck. When a journalist jokingly asked the actor in an interview what was his most ridiculous purchase when he received such an amount of money, he just laughed and replied that his mother taught him the right things, especially to be careful with money because it was not easy to earn. So he immediately put everything in the bank. In another interview, Michael recalled the best advice that Bruce Willis once gave him.
You know what? Save your money. He said, because it doesn't last forever. He said, don't be a person out here doing all this stupid stuff. He said, put your money away because you just never know which way your career is going to go. It's the best thing he told me.
Maybe that's why Michael Clarke Duncan never made it to the tabloid pages, thanks to some silly shopping spree or money-related antics. He mostly invested in real estate, and if he spent money on something without thinking, it was for charity. He supported the Sue Duncan Children's Center, Safety Harbor Kids, the American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association, and the global animal rights organization PETA. Talking about animals, the next role of Michael Clarke Duncan in a large-scale blockbuster was a role in the epic sci-fi adventure film directed by Tim Burton, Planet of the Apes, released in 2001. Although the actor there is generally impossible to recognize under the makeup, you can understand that it is him by his deep voice. He plays the role of Colonel Attar, central supporting role of militaristic gorilla. The famous comedian Steve Harvey, in his classic stand-up show Still Trippin', first mocking this role of Michael Duncan, later played the moment that for the paycheck of $10 million, which the actor revealed as a result, he himself would gladly allow to make himself a monkey and would also help in this. Share with us in the comments, in your opinion, how fundamental was Michael's choice of roles? Was it purely a money issue? Of course, he had his own criteria, and there were certainly roles that Michael would not have agreed to play at all. But despite this, it seems that from the very beginning of his acting career until his untimely death, he sincerely enjoyed every day, and the very thought that he got the opportunity to realize the dream of his whole life. That he was engaged in acting and earned it not just for a living, but much more. Therefore, the favorite advice that Michael gave to young people when he was asked about it in an interview was, quote, "Had I not believed in myself and what I was doing, I wouldn't be talking to you guys right now. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I tell kids that. I say, believe in something. Don't let people tell you, oh man, you can't be a writer, you can't be a doctor or a lawyer. Who are they to tell you what you can do with your life?" Just in this period, Michael Duncan began to pay more attention to another branch of his acting career, voice acting, which he gradually began to join in the 90s. Everyone who ever heard or personally communicated with Michael Duncan always noted his special voice. He had a soft, deep voice and always sounded very authoritative and confident. It is thanks to his voice that in his portfolio you can find more than 30 animated and video characters. Movies, TV shows, animated characters, video games, everywhere you could hear Duncan's deep voice. And that is why we decided to bring this topic out separately. Those of us who grew up in the 2000s must have heard Michael in at least one cartoon or film, the voice acting of which he joined. Since the beginning of the 2000s, this has become one of the most important directions of his acting, although the very first uncredited role was in the 90s cartoon The Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, which led to further invitations. Early on, Michael voiced a few minor roles in King of the Hill, The Proud Family, and Static Shock. With his participation in Static Shock, he began a whole wave of superhero characters, including the bad guy Massive in Lunatics Unleashed, part of the Looney Tunes franchise, and the warrior Crawl in Teen Titans. After his role in the 2003 film Daredevil, he was invited to voice the same character Kingpin in Spider-Man the New Animated Series. Later, he will voice another character from the Spider-Man universe, Groot, in Ultimate Spider-Man 2013. But in addition to superhero comics, there were also voice roles in Jimmy Neutron, Family Guy, The Fairly Odd Parents, TV movie Kim Possible, A Stitch in Time, but perhaps dozens of characters to whom he gave his voice in TV shows. Michael Duncan became the most famous also in film animation. The first time this happened was in 2001 in the animated movie Cats and Dogs, where he participated in the voice acting alongside such stars as Tobey Maguire and Alec Baldwin. Although he had a rather small role there, in 2003, Michael received an invitation to voice the role of Tug, the leader of the Grizzly Tribe, in Disney's Brother Bear. Later, he returned to the sequel of this movie in 2006. In the same 2006, Duncan's voice appeared in the sports comedy Air Buddies as the voice of a friendly wolf who helped the main characters. Subsequently, in 2008, a role in another most famous hit from the animation company DreamWorks, the cartoon Kung Fu Panda, as the voice of the fierce rhinoceros commander Vachir. In the same year, 2008, there was the animated fantasy Delgo, and in 2010, Duncan returned to the franchise, which at one time became the Kickstarter of his voice acting career. The role of the dog Sam in Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore. One of the last roles, both in voice acting and in Duncan's life in general, was the voice of the animated character Kilowog in the Ryan Reynolds film Green Lantern, which was released in 2011, a year before the actor's death, and added another colorful character to his superhero CV. After voicing the animated Cats and Dogs and the role in Planet of the Apes in 2001, Duncan appeared on the big screen in the film and already in a completely new role for him as an action hero. In 2002, Duncan took part in the action-adventure film The Scorpion King, which was both a prequel and a spin-off of the famous franchise The Mummy. Michael was cast as a heroic warrior, Nubian King Balthazar. Dwayne Johnson played the main role in the film, and in one of the interviews, Duncan admitted that he agreed to the role without even reading the script when he learned that the main star of the movie would be The Rock, because he always watched wrestling and was a big fan of it. In fact, they met even before that. Once, after Michael starred in Armageddon, he went to a wrestling match in which Johnson participated. After the match, at the restaurant across the street where Duncan had gone for a bite, he saw Dwayne, who had also gone there to rest after the fight. At first, Michael decided not to distract The Rock from his rest, but then he came over to get to know him. They chatted a bit, exchanged phone numbers, and that was all. But the acquaintance had a happy continuation for Duncan because a few years later, The Rock personally called him and offered to cooperate with him in The Scorpion King. Actually, the decision to invite Michael played in favor of Johnson himself because, according to Duncan, he once turned to him for advice regarding some acting problems he had. Because The Rock was also not a professional actor, but unlike Michael, he was not nominated for an Oscar. Duncan did not advise anything personally. He did better. Brought Dwayne with his coach, Larry Moss. According to the film script, their acquaintance began with a test fight, after which they became friends, and Balthazar supported the Scorpion King Johnson in his further trials. During the filming of this particular sword fight, there was an unfortunate incident that could have ended in an accident and the end of the career of one of them forever, since real swords were used in the film. During a fierce fight, they simply broke because the actors were fiercely competing and teasing each other all the time. Fortunately, everything worked out, no one was hurt, and the movie, although it had rather mixed reviews from critics, grossed $180 million at the box office against the $60 that was spent on the filming. When Michael Clarke Duncan was later asked how he felt about the fact that after The Green Mile, the types of roles and genres in which he had to play were so different from his most famous role, the actor always answered with great enthusiasm. I try to avoid typecasting by doing different roles, but after I did The Green Mile, I did Scorpion King, Daredevil, and Planet of the Apes, and all those movies called for me to be the big heavy guy. I don't mind playing roles like that, but I like to play things in between. I think as an actor, you want to keep being challenged. Because already during the filming of The Scorpion King, the actor signed up to participate in the next film, the role in which was also not at all similar to anything in which he participated before, and, moreover, carried a certain challenge. In March 2002, director and screenwriter Mark Steven Johnson began shooting a superhero film based on the story of a character from the Marvel comic universe, Daredevil. The main role was to be played by Ben Affleck, with whom Duncan had previously collaborated in the Armageddon project, and Michael himself, unexpectedly for everyone, was approved for the role of the main antagonist of the picture, a Manhattan crime boss nicknamed Kingpin. Unexpectedly, because since the creation of the character by Stan Lee and John Romita in 1967, the healthy and super thief Kingpin was 40 years old, a stocky 6'7" white man, and he weighed 450 pounds. He was one of the most powerful and dangerous criminal characters in the Marvel Universe. In one of the interviews, Michael admitted that it was a powerful and promising role, but the very renewal of the character initially confused him a little. Firstly, because he had to play so convincingly to break this long-standing stereotype. In general, when he was first invited to participate in the movie, Michael was convinced that he would play the role of either some ordinary bandit or Daredevil himself, but Mark Johnson insisted that even the producers of Fox had already agreed that he would be the best for this role, and had pre-approved it for him. Duncan himself was somewhat shocked. It's a little pressure because people have these comic books and they keep them and they want it to be what they see in the comic book. They don't want you changing it all the way around and changing colors, and so I was really worried about that. Mark said, just go in there and do the best job that you can, and so once he told me that, I just went in there and tried to do my best. But despite all the doubts, this Kingpin turned out to be so realistic and convincing that, despite the rather cool reviews of the critics for the new superhero film, Michael Clarke Duncan's performance was mentioned separately in a positive light. For example, the most famous American film critic, Roger Ebert, wrote in his review that, quote, Duncan in particular has a presence that makes the camera want to take a step back and protect its groin. For the role, the actor had to make some sacrifices, namely, to gain weight again, which, although it was not so difficult for him, Duncan himself did not like it very much, as well as his manager, so at first they exchanged views a bit about exactly how much Michael should gain. At the time, he weighed 290 pounds, and the director insisted that the character should weigh at least somewhere between 330 to 340. That is, the actor had to gain 40 pounds. Not so much. To me, it wasn't that hard because anytime they pay you what they paid me to eat and gain weight and not really worry about your abs muscles or nothing, that was like the easiest job in the world. So I worked out maybe a half hour a day. I didn't do any cardio, so I had to keep the weight up. I lifted a lot. I power lifted a lot, which you only do about 1 or 2 reps when you power lift, and eat whatever you want to eat. Basically, for Michael, the role in Daredevil was, in some sense, a dream role because he grew up on comics and adored them. And to become a part of another world he dreamed of since childhood was simply fantastic. Michael said that when he was a child, his collection of comics was neatly organized and laid out in a certain order on the floor throughout the room. And here in the story, Mother Jean appears again on the horizon, this time as a real evil genius. Her son reminded her about this story later for years, and she must have regretted what she did then more than once. One day, when the boy returned home, he saw that his room was clean, and all the comics had disappeared from the floor. Michael was literally numb when he saw that. When he asked his mother where she had put all his comics, she calmly replied that they belonged in the incinerator. As Martin later laughingly recalled in an interview, for the rest of his life, when his mother asked him for money, the actor would joke that she should go to that incinerator and take the $3.5 million that he had lost. Reading the comics, Duncan always sympathized with the Kingpin because he, like Mike himself, was picked on by other kids when he was a boy. And when he found out that he would play this particular character, after the first doubts came euphoria. The character filled him so much with his power that the actor, imperceptibly for himself, even began to behave like a Kingpin, talking arrogantly with his assistants. He later claimed that after filming Daredevil, he was back to his normal self for some time. He took a month off to calm down and disconnect from the character because he was starting to act really aggressive. Despite Kingpin's impressive physique and feigned swagger, he was actually a great fighter, possessing tremendous strength and could easily beat any superhero. Both the original comics and the original script had quite a few violent and gory scenes involving the Kingpin, but already during filming they decided not to emphasize it too much, especially reducing the degree of violence, perhaps because the picture was intended for a children's audience as well. The actor performed most of his stunts in the movie himself and was sincerely proud of it. I had to. I did every last one of my own stunts. My stunt double was not as big as me, so they felt that it would just be too much of a difference. I didn't mind it. It was pretty cool doing your own stunts because you can honestly say, that was me every single time. And although for Michael Duncan, participation in this film was a rather noticeable career step and another embodiment of childhood hobbies in general, the film did not enter the list of the best, created on the theme of the Marvel Universe. After this role, Michael did not act in movies for several years, but he was very active in voice acting, which we already mentioned earlier. Just in this period, in 2003, he joined the animated hit Brother Bear, but just a few years later, in 2005, two high-profile premieres were released one after the other, in which Duncan got bright and unusual roles. One of the films became a blockbuster, and the other, having certain chances, frankly did not make it. In March, Robert Rodriguez directed an explosive crime noir, Sin City, based on the comic series of the same name by Frank Miller. Like most of Rodriguez's creations, the picture became a blockbuster, and Michael Clarke Duncan got the role of the giant Minute, which suited him perfectly. In addition, this was already the fourth film in which he starred with Bruce Willis. After The Green Mile, this was the first film with Duncan's participation, which received a certain number of film awards and nominations. They even released an action figure from Duncan's character, the creepy Minute, and this was already the third action figure of Michael Clarke Duncan in the role of his movie character. Before that, there was Atar from Planet of the Apes and Balthazar from The Scorpion King. When Duncan was asked how he felt about it, he was happy as a kid because he knew from his own experience as a kid how comic book fans, especially kids, felt about such things. I think it's really cool. When you see stuff like that, you just feel like, man, I have a really good job right now. I get to pretend that I'm a warrior, have kids buy my action figure, and it's all really neat. Success is something you really dream about, and you're not sure of how it's going to taste. Well, I'm tasting it right now, and it tastes really great. Following the intense and dark, especially filmed in black, red, and white colors, like the original comic book, Sin City, Douglas's second joint work with director Michael Bay, movie The Island was released. It was the same Bay who gave Michael a ticket to the big screen in Armageddon. But this time, despite the bright cast, Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson in the lead roles, acting at a high level, potential tension and intrigue of the plot, the blockbuster did not go well. The film was oversaturated with special effects, excessive product placement, and although it did not fail at the box office, it received very ambiguous and mixed reviews from critics. Although Duncan himself was often praised for the role he played, in a review of the film for the Chicago Sun-Times, the same Roger Ebert separately wrote that Michael Clarke Duncan has only 3 or 4 scenes, but they're of central importance, and he brings true horror to them. But when the actor himself was asked about this apparently not very successful film, he always maintained a team spirit. Even though I've had people come to me and say, I didn't like The Island, I liked your part, that still isn't a gratification to me because it's a team thing. It said The Island, it didn't say Michael Clarke Duncan in The Island, so we were all a team. If the movie doesn't do well, then I don't do well. That's how I feel about it. Starting from 2006 to 2010, Michael was more active in movies, and most of these movies were comedies, but not all were successful. Especially not as successful as the first of them, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby. The picture was released in 2006, and Michael Clarke Duncan was lucky enough to star in it together with such a famous comic duo as Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. The events of the film develop against the background of the NASCAR racing theme, and Duncan got the role of a close friend and crew chief of the main character, the racer Ricky Bobby, played by Ferrell. This film is also considered one of the best of those in which Duncan played. But at the beginning of filming, the actor felt like a person who could not swim and was thrown into deep water without a life jacket. He had to learn a lot again, because the performance of Ferrell and Reilly, their lines and interaction in the scenes, was mostly a complete improvisation, and when Michael had to play scenes with them, he was at first just lost and didn't know what to do because he couldn't find a place to wedge into their dialogue. I wasn't used to that. I'm used to, if I step on your line, I apologize, excuse me for cutting you off, okay, next take, I'll let you get that out. But they don't give a damn about no lines. It wasn't all that was them. Nothing in there was scripted, nothing. But in the end, Duncan did not give up and proved that he can joke at the same level as the star duo. He always considered himself funny and called it funny at home. That is, not a professional comedian. He never learned it either. Michael was just an ordinary guy who always liked to joke and laugh, but he learned and was eventually able to keep up with the pace set by Ferrell and Reilly. Everyone especially remembered their threesome scene, the funniest in the movie, where Ferrell sticks a knife in his leg and Michael offers to stick a second one. The actor learned to pick up lines and jokes outside the script, and as a result, most of the lines in the film were also not written in advance. They were from me, especially the line where I said, stick another knife in here too. I got that from, I used to work at the gas company, and when you get your drill bit stuck in the concrete, you just take it out and go get another drill bit and dig around that one and take it out. So that's where I got that line from. In 2006, Duncan appeared in a secondary role in the comedy School for Scoundrels, as well as in the first European film of his career, the crime drama psychological thriller One Way. He also tried himself in indie cinema, starring in the film Slipstream, which was first shown in 2007. Sir Anthony Hopkins was the script author, director, and played the main character of the movie. After the first screening at the festival, many people did not understand the picture, and the critics' reviews were very mixed. One of the most influential film critics, Roger Ebert, for example, although he gave the film 3 out of 4 stars, called the film an attempt by Hopkins to do something very intricate and complex. This was a kind of surrealistic noir comedy in which the screenwriter and actor, having met fate, fell into a kind of vortex where time, dreams, and reality collided in an increasingly swirling flow. Duncan later recalled that at first he also was somewhat confused about the role, which actually consisted of 3, but despite that, he was delighted to be able to work with Hopkins himself. He called Sir Anthony Big Tony, paying tribute to the scale of his personality, and said that, quote, he's the nicest guy you ever want to meet. I play 3 different roles. Where he wrote it, I had to call him and I said, Tony, I don't get it. If I'm going to do a movie, I have to get something. I can't just go in there and do my part and say whatever happens. I have to know what's going on through the whole movie. And he explained it to me step by step exactly what was going on. And it's a brilliant movie. 2007, again a new genre form in the cinema, an intermediate role of an FBI agent in the adventure sci-fi drama The Last Mimsy. Although the film turned out to be a commercial failure, the actor himself described it as a good family movie and did not regret participating in it. After that, as many as 2 comedies with the participation of Michael Duncan were released in a row. Welcome Home, Roscoe Jenkins in 2008, where he played one of the secondary roles in which, according to the fees, barely covered the costs of filming. And The Slammin' Salmon in 2009, in which, finally, Michael had the main role. But both films received mostly negative reviews from critics. Despite the fact that the actor's performance in The Slammin' Salmon was noted separately, in particular, the New York Times called Duncan's performance film's best performance, and the rest of the film was recognized as full of outdated jokes. As if that was not enough, in the same year, 2009, Michael participated in a very mediocre crime film, Street Fighter: The Legend of Chun-Li, which one of the critics called, quote, neither the best nor the worst of movies derived from video games. But the actor did not give up. In 2008 to 2009, he took part in 2 episodes of the popular comedy TV show 2.5 Men, with Charlie Sheen in the lead role, as well as in an episode of the comedy action series Chuck. It was during this period that Duncan decided to fundamentally change something significant in his life. In 2009, he became a vegetarian and one of the stars who actively supported the organization PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. In 2012, he even appeared for them in a special interview where he expressed his views on vegetarianism and how it changed his life, about his attitude to animals and his pets.
And I mean, believe me, I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I'm saying I'm a lot healthier than I was when I was eating meat. And best thing about being a vegetarian for me, number one, is I know I'm not harming any animals. I have cats and dogs at home, and I know I'm not doing that. The number 2 thing is increased strength. I'm a lot stronger than I was when I was eating meat. And I found out that most animals, most of your most powerful animals in the wild are vegetarians. So I'm trying to get my strength to that level. I don't know if I'll make it or not, but elephants are vegetarians. They're pretty big. So
Michael admitted that all his life he was used to eating meat, a lot of meat. But after he began to have certain health problems, which he did not elaborate on, the actor decided to try vegetarianism. After watching several documentaries about where and how meat gets to our table, how it is grown, fed, and processed, the actor's eyes were open to things he had never even thought about before. Michael said that after making this decision, he immediately completely removed any meat from his refrigerator, distributing it to his neighbors. There were products worth at least $5,000. It was a principled and conscious decision made in the interest of improving his own health and in the interest of those whom he loved and called children, the animals.
I have 3 fish, and then there's Lucy. There's Big Papa, who's the only male, Bunny, Snowflake, Whiskers, Pinky, and Mimi. So those are my animals at home. I have 6 cats and 2 dogs at home, and I love each and every one of them very much. And they got all different personalities, and like I said, I'm a big animal lover, so I don't think I could ever eat meat again in my entire life. And those are my babies.
With the new lifestyle, his career included new projects, each of which he appreciated in his own way. Several dramas were released one after another, mostly independent films in which Michael played leading roles. Perhaps such decisions were influenced by significant changes in his personal life, which also occurred during this period, but we'll talk about that a little later. Perhaps for the first time after The Green Mile in the independent film directed by Mario Van Peebles, Redemption Road, which was released in 2010, he played a serious, characteristic, dramatic role. It was one of the two main roles in this bluesy road movie. The film was mostly screened at festivals and, despite the very low box office, received quite positive reviews from critics. With his basso voice, intimidating glare, and toothy smile, the giant-sized Duncan casts a mesmerizing presence. Remarkably, he invests his daunting physicality with a deep-carved vulnerability. Redemption Road was soon followed by another indie sports drama from The Rough, which was first presented in 2011 at the Essence Music Festival and only appeared on U.S. screens in 2015 when Michael, who played one of the leading roles in it, already passed away. Immediately after From the Rough, Michael joined another sports drama, this time about boxing, The Challenger, the filming of which began in 2012, and there Michael Duncan acted not only in one of the main characters, but also as the executive producer. It was also an independent film that was shown in many festivals and won a number of awards there. Officially, the drama In the Hive, directed by Robert Townsend, is considered the last film in which the actor starred, probably because it was the first posthumous premiere of the film in which he starred. The film was released just a few months after Michael's death in December 2012. There, Michael played the main character, and at the request of his loved ones, at the actor's funeral, the director agreed even before the official premiere to show a fragment of the picture with a powerful monologue by Michael Clarke Duncan. This film was especially important for Duncan, and he tried to do his best to convey the important things that were embedded in the idea of the picture. He played the assistant principal of a special school for at-risk youth. In this role, he was finally able to completely get out of his external image of a bully and show his true inner essence. Duncan, who grew up in a disadvantaged area and for whom the stories of these children were the stories of his friends and peers, hoped to change at least something with this picture, to change the general attitude towards these children, and perhaps to influence at least one young life on someone who will watch this movie. Director and screenwriter Townsend was impressed with Michael's performance in this role. In one of the interviews, he shared one of the most vivid memories of the actor. Once, when the director came to the set on the day when they were supposed to shoot a very important scene in which Duncan had 4 pages of dialogue, he saw that all the actors and the crew had gathered around Duncan and were discussing something. I was like, "What's going on?" And Michael said, "This is an important scene and I need everybody to be on point today. No laughing, no joking. I want this to be powerful. I want this movie to be really powerful and I need you all to work with me today." No actor normally does that. The director does. And I was just like, oh my God, I love him. Another posthumous premiere with Michael's participation was the horror thriller A Resurrection. The film was released in 2013 and was very well received by fans of the genre and critics. Made a good box office, and the performance of the main actors in a genre atypical for them was recognized as more than convincing. But it should not be assumed that at his 50s, Michael suddenly became serious, completely changed, and completely abandoned his usual roles, delving only into dramatic roles. Just in 2011, he gave his voice to the character of Kilowog from the superhero blockbuster Green Lantern, based on the DC Comics series of the same name, because in the film, Kilowog is an animated character. It didn't matter. Michael was as happy as a child who was given a Kilowog collectible figure to play with. I was a fan of Green Lantern a long time ago, so it was very easy for me to go in there and voice Kilowog. He trains all the Green Lanterns. He's a real type of tough guy who knows everything, and actually, in one of the comic books, he and Superman fought to a tie. So that's the coolest part about it. Remember that. In the same 2011, he was invited to play in an episode of the police comedy drama Bones, and literally immediately from this episode and its characters, they created a separate new series, a spin-off, which was released on TV screens in 2012 and was called The Finder. In Michael's life, this was the first role on TV where he played not only an episode, but was a key figure in the series, a partner, friend, and advisor on many issues, from personal work to the main character played by Geoff Stultz. When the main bosses from Fox asked Hart Henson, the executive producer and screenwriter of Bones, to create the character Leo Knox specifically for Michael Clarke Duncan, he was absolutely for it. Although from the beginning Leo Knox was planned to be something different, a former lawyer and bar owner in Key West, Florida, was supposed to be someone like the actor Sam Shepard, a thin, elderly white cowboy. But Henson liked the idea. He was a huge presence, and I believe he was destined to be a big TV star. A lot of actors are nothing like what you see, but MCD was very much like what you see on screen. That big smile, that big voice, not a bit of a bully to him. He doesn't alpha male anybody, though he could alpha male anyone he wanted. He was just genuinely a good guy. Separately, Henson was surprised by how 54-year-old Michael withstands the physical load caused by some episodes and what physical form the actor was in. In particular, he recalls a series where Duncan, along with his partner Jeff, had to wear almost 50-pound vests in Miami at the Sonesta Hotel and carry them up and down 20 flights of stairs and do 50 push-ups at the bottom and top of their route. Despite the age difference of 20 years and Duncan's much greater weight, the actors were equally coping with all of that. Duncan agreed to this role with pleasure. He was always happy to take on something that he had not done before, and that was the first time for him. I'd never done television. I'd never done an hour drama, and this was a chance for me to break out of the rut of doing just the big guy roles. Even though I'm still a big guy in this one, I put a little twist on it. I'm mean when I have to be, just like in real life. Enforcer/poet/bodyguard/lawyer. I'm a lot of things, but I'm also Walter Sherman's, aka The Finder's, best friend. Unfortunately, the series did not have very high ratings, and the second season planned from the beginning was cancelled, but it would not have happened for other reasons. Unexpectedly for everyone, in September 2012, full of life, new plans, simultaneously engaged in several new projects, including preparations for filming in the second part of Sin City: A Dame to Kill For, at the age of 54, Michael Clarke Duncan had a heart attack and soon passed away in the hospital, never fully recovering. For most, it was a real shock. Some cynics joked that he should not have become a vegetarian and changed his eating habits. What happened to Michael Clarke Duncan was shocking, even in light of the fact that literally several years before his heart attack in 2009, he began to follow a vegetarian lifestyle and promote it in every way because he sincerely believed that this decision changed his life for the better. His sudden death has reignited the debate over the potential effects of a vegetarian diet on heart health. Even such a well-known men's magazine as Men's Health published an entire article devoted to the possibility of a connection between the actor's untimely death and his diet, and an analysis of what a balanced diet should be when being a vegetarian. Of course, the fact that Michael passed away so early shocked those who knew him best, regardless of the reason or circumstances. The dominant emotion of everyone who knew Michael personally was deep grief and rejection of what happened, because it was difficult to find a more life-loving, positive, and full of potential person than the funny Big Mike. At the time of his death, the fortune of actor Michael Clarke Duncan was estimated at $8 million, which also became a reason for intense emotions, only slightly different. 2 years before his death, in 2010, Michael Clarke Duncan met a woman who everyone used to call nothing else but the Queen of Mean, a well-known participant of several seasons of the reality show The Apprentice, Omarosa Manigault. The show, which evaluated the business skills of a group of contestants, involved Donald Trump, both as a producer and as the show's host. Owing to her confrontational behavior and business style, Omarosa has also been called the woman America loved to hate, and the television network E! Entertainment Television called her reality TV's #1 bad girl. In 2010, just when a couple met, Omarosa participated in a new dating TV show with Trump called The Ultimate Merger, where 12 applicants competed for her attention. It was with such an ambiguous lady that the childish, life-loving Michael met whom everyone in Hollywood affectionately called the Gentle Giant. Few could believe it, but they were seen several times together in public, and they confirmed to the press that they were dating. She was 36 at the time. Duncan was 52, and the sincere giant confirmed to the press with his characteristic, captivating enthusiasm. That's my girl right there. That's my girl. Her personality. Really, she's very knowledgeable. She's the first woman that I can wake up next to and knows all about politics and what's going on in the world. The world, defense, what's going on with the president's program, anything and everything. She's very intelligent. It was also announced that they met as ordinary people at a Whole Foods supermarket and for some time kept a certain distance, trying not to interfere with each other's careers because Omarosa had just started a new show and then Michael finally gave up. This is just a guess, but they say that since Mike was often called a mother's boy and he was under the strong influence of his loving mother from childhood, a strong and bitchy woman, this could just be his type, which he naively pecked at. Was it true love on her part? Who knows? Of course, she claimed that it was. Mike himself clearly fell for her. I tried not to get in her way, but my feelings got the best of me. I took her to a Lakers game, and that was it. I shouldn't have done that, but I couldn't help myself. 2 years later, on July 13, 2012, according to Omarosa's statements, which she later voiced to doctors and the press, she noticed in the middle of the night that Duncan's heart had stopped. The woman called 911 and independently performed CPR on him before the ambulance arrived, which she learned in college. He was taken to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where Michael was diagnosed with a heart attack from which the actor never recovered and died on September 3, 2012, spending all these months in the hospital. Already after Duncan's death, a 32-year-old woman named Marquia Ambrose appeared from nowhere and declared that she was Michael's daughter, that they had not spoken for 11 years, that she sincerely regretted it, and that she should be the actor's sole heir. At the same time, a source close to the actor claimed that Mike did not meet her mother many years ago, but never confirmed his paternity. Furthermore, the actor's family suddenly learned that Michael and Omarosa were secretly engaged, in her own words, and it turned out that in those last months of his stay in the hospital, the actor rewrote his will in her favor, leaving his own sister and the rest of the family, in fact, with practically nothing. This was also from their words. In favor of the not very honest motives of the so-called bride, it's said that she very cleverly sold a certain number of personal things and memorabilia belonging to Michael without even informing the family about it. Cars, watches, director's chair from the Green Mile. It's also a fact that Omarosa made a real PR show out of Michael's funeral, which she organized herself, completely excluding his family from it. There was a red carpet and separate parking lots, Category A for her VIP guests and Category B for family members and not popular friends, acquaintances, and work colleagues. Even outsiders mentioned this show with surprise, and not only family members who were clearly opposed to the unexpected daughter-in-law. Whether or not it was a well-thought-out and organized Manigault PR show, it was she who persuaded Robert Townsend, the director of one of the last very important films for Duncan, In the Hive, to show an episode from the film where the actor gave advice at the funeral to one of the young offenders. After the viewing, everyone who was at the funeral got up and silently applauded. Many cried. I'll never forget the day we did a scene for In the Hive where Michael has this boy in a corner and talks to him about choices. It was important for him to get that scene right. Michael even talked to me about growing up on the south side of Chicago. He said, "Robert, these kids need help." The facts are also that the mother, whom Michael Duncan loved most in life, and who suffered from Alzheimer's in recent years and was under his sister's care, got some money in a separate trust to which Judy did not have access. This amount was not made public, it was not discussed. To Judy herself, with whom Michael, again, had a rather distant relationship for most of the last years, he nevertheless left a considerable sum of $100,000, partly as compensation for taking care of his mother. Therefore, it cannot be said that the family was left with nothing, and the fact that the rest of the distant and not-so-close relatives were not included in the will is actually the matter of the one who wrote it. That is, Michael Clarke Duncan. Whether he was 100% sane and in adequate condition is a question to which there is still no answer. Judy claimed that the last time she saw her brother alive was their family gathering at Christmas 2011, and in her words, he seemed a bit off. I think anyone can be manipulated at any time. I think there's always somebody that's going to try and get something out of you, and I think that's what it was. Because like I said, the last time we saw him, he just wasn't right. There was something going on, and I know it. So for him to have left her everything, there was some manipulation there. On one of the shows she and Omarosa were both on, LaToya Jackson went public with her speculation about Duncan's heart attack and death, blaming it on Omarosa, for which she sued her for defamation. LaToya Jackson literally called her opponent on the show an insidious schemer, capable of anything, and that she probably directed the actions of Michael Clarke Duncan, pulling the strings she needed. Some agreed with this version, especially Michael's family, and many sided with Omarosa, supporting the woman in her loss. Because she claimed that Michael's family from the very beginning of this whole story, despite Duncan's clear will, persistently tried to trick money from her. At the same time, Judy did not allow Omarosa to communicate with the groom's mother, with whom, according to the woman, she had a very warm relationship during Michael's lifetime. Michael's sister will not allow me to see Michael's mother now, or talk to her on the phone because she wants money, and it is just devastating and cruel. It's not right for her to cut me off from his mother just because she's displeased about how much money she got in his will. I am truly concerned about his mother's care and well-being. I pray that his mother is being well cared for. Michael was adamant about that. Months after the actor's death, Omarosa took part in All-Star Celebrity Apprentice, playing for the Sue Duncan Children's Center, a favorite charity of her late fiancé, and won $40,000 for the center in memory of Michael Duncan. And then a nasty legal battle for the inheritance began. Michael's sister Judy hired a lawyer to investigate the impossible involvement of Omarosa Manigault in the fraudulent manipulations of forging a will in order to take possession of Michael's money. And judging by the last public information, the case was still ongoing in 2018. The end has not yet been set. Who do you think is right in this story? Do you believe in Omarosa's true love for Duncan? Is it possible that all the family's claims are also motivated more by money than by love for the deceased relative? Share with us in the comments. Nevertheless, a year after his death, in 2013, Omarosa put Michael Duncan's house, in which he died and where she later lived, up for sale for $1.299 million. This house in Woodland Hills, California, was Duncan's largest and most luxurious investment in real estate. 6,861 square foot, 7 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, swimming pool, gym, basketball court, garage for 3 cars, and underground parking for 15 cars. According to Omarosa, she felt very lonely there. Everything reminded her of Michael, and that's why she decided to move from there, closer to her family and church. According to her, the property was put up for sale by Duncan's trust. Such are the posthumous passions which unfortunately somewhat overshadow the bright memory of a wonderful actor with a tender big heart, a sincere smile, and a stocky physique. And who knows, maybe if he was still alive, fate would have sent him another Green Mile, and this time Michael would have even received his Oscar. Unfortunately, we will never know it. But his sincere tears of John Coffey, the convincing power and charisma of his action roles, real laughter from his comic images, and the deep low voice of his cartoon characters will remain with us forever. Thank you very much for being with us on the Biographer channel. If you liked our story, click on the video that appeared on your screen to learn more about the lives and biographies of other famous and unusual personalities.